Alright, hey everybody, Texas Trucker here, Lance's Performance Shop, LoneStarMopars.com. It is Sunday afternoon. Came out early, got the screen door up, got the fans going, had lunch already, should be interruption free. There's surprisingly a storm brewing. Typically thunderstorm, you know, it'll rain all day, but typically thunderstorms don't fire up until like mid to late afternoon here, so kind of interesting to have one start rumbling around 1. Where we left off last night, I was attempting, I think we're just going to make a new video here, because again, I'm kind of way behind on editing stuff and don't know where good breaks would be, so that seemed like a good break. That was that day, this is this day, so we were attempting to do the electrical connections last time, right? And the ones that we have left would be alternator, coil, and then grounds right over here for our, you know, fuel rail and everything, and then checking that text there. That's a funny little thing my nephew sent, but grounds from that and wherever else the other one goes, but they go on that top stud, which is a total pain to get seated with that water pump tube, so be leery of that if you go to reassemble. My advice, probably to stab that water pump tube in after you've mounted all your accessories. So in this video, the agenda, what are we going to do? Well, I need to get the alternator seated so we can make the connections. We need to go ahead and mount our power steering bracket so we can get those grounds done. Then coming back over here, we need to get the tensioner on. We need to get the coil bracket with the tensioner going. That gaping hole right about here where you don't see black, that would be our idler pulley. We need to finally, I've mentioned this in a couple of videos I think, down there we got a nice damper, but we don't have a pulley on it, so I'm unable to find one, like online to order. Even called a couple Mopar parts houses and they don't have them, which is kind of concerning. So might be something I grab some extras of, if you will. Not a big deal, you know, if you're retrofitting a Magnum, but like if you're doing this for your, you know, Ram, Dakota, Durango, Grand Cherokee type of deal, apparently the crank pulley is hard to come by. So I'm gonna harvest the one off of our 5.2. We will bolt it up, should be zero issues there. I say that, hopefully we get lucky. I'll finally stab the stupid dipstick in place. It's a very annoying design, and it kind of, I don't know if this one's bent slightly different, but it seems to sort of want to interfere with our AC lines. And that's probably what we're going to go for in this video. So we'll run with that. Now, what I chiseled out last night that I told you I couldn't find, this is what it was. And apparently it's a bushing that should be in the bracket. It looks, when you're in the truck looking down, this looks just like a lock washer, you know. And I thought, oh man, this clearance is so tight. I see what happened, you know. It's probably some like nasty eBay part I picked up, and you know, there's just a lock washer stuck to it. And so I started chiseling out, and then this giant chunk came out. And it was like after midnight when I did that. I came over here and looked at my factory bracket. It has this in place, and I could easily tell it was a bushing. So kind of my bad there. It's one of those things that happens. So I don't know if I mentioned it in the other video, I think the factory honestly had that bundle of wires there, you know, your cruise control stuff, routed under the power steering hose. I don't like that. I assumed it was something I did. After disassembling all the throttle body, you know, kick down linkages and bracket and taking everything off and popping, you know, lines out, I've just redone it my way. I think it's better, you know, if I have to service that, or particularly, you know, like a hose goes on the power steering, it's just better to not have that crud leak. And truth be told, if that hose were to say rupture, I would honestly route it outside of those lines anyway. So that's that. Trying to think if there's anything else. I had an exciting delivery here for a Sunday, but we'll cover that hopefully in another video that I'm hoping to get to make today. So I'm gonna quit rambling, gonna try to figure out this alternator mount. If I can use the stainless, we're getting close to not having all this junk on the cowl, you know. If I can use the stainless, I'll do so. If not, I'll roll with factory hardware. But that's kind of our agenda. That's sort of what went down last night, and I will catch you back here with some updates. Alright, it is exactly what it looks like. We're out of the truck. Alternator would not fit, hence why we chiseled off what we thought was a lock washer last night. Right here, this bushing, we have subtly persuaded it to come out I don't know, like shy of 1/8 of an inch or something. We don't need a ton of clearance, but again, it's right here where we would have the factory bracket that we need this to clear. And of course, when we run our bolt through and cinch everything down, it'll kind of pull the spacer back into position. So I'm gonna try this. If this didn't work, I'm getting a bigger hammer. This is the Black Giant that was under the truck somewhere, because now the Picard is in the engine bay. Or actually it's on the cart, my apologies, but I think that little bit might make the difference. Alright, just got cut across my back here, but the alternator is in. Just tapping that back, that extra little bit made the difference. Obviously we haven't bolted it up, but it will drop into place, which is what we needed, and that'll allow us to complete the electrical connection. So I'll get this thing tightened down. Alright, so this right here is what holds the alternator in place on the outside. And by outside, I'm talking this bolt, the one below it that we have in our hand. The stud is on the inside, and then you've got a much, much shorter bolt, sort of right there. Yeah, it's painful. And the alloy Boltz kit had nothing remotely close to this size in the alternator to, or power steering to accessory bracket bag, so I'm reusing these as much as I'd prefer stainless. Gonna go ahead and put my anti-seize on them, tighten it down, and that will allow me to start making connections. Speaking of stainless, the reason this isn't done, I've got this one in place, kind of holding it in. I'm thinking I must have pulled the stainless bolt and been trying to kind of press or shimmy out, you know, that bushing before I just hammered it. So I'll have to go back out of the truck, dig it out. Alright, so out of the truck real quick, and what you are looking at is a Gates Idler Pulley. It's their part number 38033. I've also got the alloy Boltz stainless here. And if you take a gander at this is what we had to rob off of my factory 5.2. I told you I might make one or something. Well, didn't need to, because I was able to find one straight from Mopar for $16. So we're going to drop that sucker in, throw our bolt back through. This one I can now pair with my OE pulley and assemble back onto the accessory bracket. I've got it sitting over here, so I'll place it there. I need that 9/16 wrench to go in there and tighten that stud down. Seems like there's something else I wanted to cover while we were out here. Let's just do this, I guess. So this is Gates 38116, and what it is a tensioner pulley. And I picked up a spare just to have it. And what we want to pay attention to is not 38016, but 38116, which if we drop down here, that is exactly what we're looking at. Now this is going to say do not assemble, do not disassemble, I should say, and that's in reference to this. This is of course the tensioner. This is the pulley we showed you, that is the tensioner. So this is the Gates replacement, and I think you can get it for like 28. The pulley alone is 12, 15, somewhere in there. This was me mocking up the factory piece because that's how the tensioner and coil bracket were oriented. So I'm just trying to kind of showcase this before I grab it and take off with it. But we're going to swap this to the bracket with the coil. We'll clean everything up, and I'll hop back in the truck, get that stud tightened down, and kind of show you the grounds there. Alright, so finally at long last we've got that stud in there. I've got everything torqued down. I have the grounds coming out of this convoluted tubing that runs over towards the battery tray. We've got the ground from the runner of every connection here, fuel injectors, TPS, what else is over there, map sensor. Everything on the driver's side, if you will, has a ground that runs all the way to the front of this harness. So it goes on first, then this one right here from this run, it's torqued down. I went ahead, I could not find the torque specs for this stuff, so I went with 20 foot-pounds. I don't know if that's right or not. That's what we went with. Also, I wonder if it was that and not this, because I forgot I'd put that right there. Anyway, I'll have to pick that up so I don't make that mistake again. Might switch them out, we don't know. That said, I did attempt to find the Idler Pulley torque, and the more I use that book, the more I realize it sucks. You look for Idler Pulley and there's nothing. You look for pulley and think Idler might be listed under it, nothing. And then you think, okay, maybe it's with belt, and belt isn't listed either in the index. It's kind of mind-boggling, really. So the water pump pulley bolt, which I'm not really sure what that is on this truck was 20 foot-pounds, so that's what I made this, is 20 foot-pounds. It seems to spin fine. I am going to now torque this, come in and set up this finally, our little problem child on the alternator. Then we will make the connections. I've sort of mocked this bracket up. In the videos I watched where this was still assembled from the factory, you would think like this tab would slide in to this slot, and it wasn't. This was like offset over here, and this was to the left, this is to the right type of a thing. Doesn't make sense to me. I'm not quite sure why it doesn't line up, but I'm thinking we might just have to bend it. So we'll go to town in that manner, and then we'll be back to sort of cover some of the connections we make over here. Alright, so everything is tightened down. This little serrated washer nut we're going to set here. We're going to fish out. Where did it go? It's been here waiting patiently. There it is. This guy. And we want to seat this, and then we want to place the nut, and then we're going to slide that boot over it. There's also another connector. Thinking, where did it go? That's coil IAT. That must be my coolant sensor. I'm gonna get that down there. So it must be this guy right here. Yep, this is the back of the alternator, as my blue masking tape eloquently tells us. So that connector is very cool because it's easy to get to. We just slide it in, push it on, click, and we're home free. So now I'll try to get that out of my way. Kind of need two hands so I don't drop the nut and have to fish it out. You only live once, let's go for it. Alright, good thing with an aluminum intake, if it does fall and go in the valley pan area, you can typically fish it out with a magnet. So we've got that in place. I think what I'll do off camera is try to get a bolt through there, see if we can structure it a little better. This one needs to come all the way down there. Might get the go ahead, it makes sense to do it with a radiator and everything, but at the same time this is getting super crowded, and actually before I put this down I might actually want to get the radiator hose and the heater hose on there, and we could also do the same thing over here. Doesn't really fit with the video theme, but we're kind of losing free space. Things are getting tight and cramped, so might just go ahead and do it. So I'll grab some of that stuff and we will be back. Hey everybody, Texas Trucker here, Lance's Performance Shop, LoneStarMopars.com. I'm super excited. It is Sunday and we just got this delivery from Rock Auto. What's inside, you wonder? Well, probably like $25, $40 worth of stuff. One of the items being the passenger side heater hose. And that is going to allow me to be pretty dadgum close to wrapping the reinstallation of the motor and all the components in, so I'm beyond excited about that. We're going to cut this open, take a look, and see if we can get everything mounted up. Oh yeah, there it is. That guy right there with the convoluted tubing around him. Now clearly that's not a full-length run, and I don't know why places don't sell, this is all auto parts stores and parts suppliers, I don't know why they don't sell complete assemblies. Like if you're replacing a heater hose, it's going to be smart to just replace the entire run, including the connectors and clamps. So I don't understand why it's so difficult to find component 1, component 2, you know, connection 1, clamp A through D. It makes no sense to me, but that's how they do it. So this will go essentially this side here on the intake manifold. It's going to run around the valve cover. That's sort of where the convoluted tubing would be. That end there would terminate into a clamped connection, right? So somewhere you could pull everything off and flush your system. Then on the other side of the connector we would have a run of hose, which I've purchased this to cover me, and that will run back to the heater core itself, where it again will have a clamp. So we might have to harvest some of this stuff. Like you can kind of see what I'm talking about, right? Like that's our run right there. Then you've got your 2 clamps, and then we run all the way back to the heater core. Same thing on the passenger side. This is my new one that I already had, or driver side I should say. That runs all the way, but we've got that connection there where you have a service point. So I don't know why it's so difficult to just package all of that, you know, have like part A, B, and C, and if you just need that small runner in the box, you do it. If you just need the backside, you do it. If you just need a clamp because you cracked it, or connector I should say, or you just need clamps because you lost them. There ought to be some way to procure these items together or individually that's not this complicated, and Rock Auto's system is actually way better than most parts stores. So the other thing in there, aside from that 6-foot run of heater hose, that is a bypass hose. I picked that up just because I don't trust the one that we have clamped in there, and I'll already have it on hand. So I will leave it at that, and we will get to installing this stuff. Alright, so working on the driver's side now, and you can see my factory Mopar line right there, blue masking tape that says water pump tube. That means that if we trace it, the 90-degree bend is actually going to be at the firewall. So our gates hose, it's got a little bit more 90, and then if you were to run the length, pull them out, straighten them side by side, is a little bit longer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, we'll simply trim it. But that's going to be the orientation, and if we come up here, you can't really see what I've been working on, but right back there, you see the trans dipstick. This will be the passenger side. It's going to route over here, and then the driver's side is going to wrap around with that 90 and come in where you see that blue masking tape, the water pump tube. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that out. I guess I will attempt, since I can't find these connectors to purchase anywhere, we'll try to cut it out of at least the driver's side. But right here, you'll note that we've got that clip that kind of just clamps onto the hose, and then it would hold a wire or cable bundle. So we'll try to replicate that as best we can too. And just before I peel the label, 28472, is it upside down for you? Yes it is, but that is the Gates part number for the driver's side heater hose, again going from the water pump tube all the way back to the firewall. So you'll never believe this. Just got this apart, and I will not be reusing that because it's corroded and rusted out on the inside. I assumed it would be plastic in all honesty. But we're making really good progress today, and then I got interrupted. I thought this would be like my big long run of hours. No interruption. Wasn't the case. Long story short, start getting a ton of text messages, and there's a snake at my sister's house. And then there's a robin that's watching the snake. And then there were her cats watching the robin watching the snake. And this went on for like 2 hours, you know, something like that. And finally it's like, you know, hey, do I need to come get rid of the snake? And no, don't wanna have anyone stop what they're doing, blah blah blah. And long story short, I had to go get rid of the snake. And I believe it was a bull snake, which those are actually good snakes. You know, they eat rats and all kinds of stuff. The problem is they will also eat birds. And if you did not know, they can climb. And what I mean by climb is like go vertical. And that's what it was doing. So the robin was on high alert, not because it was going to eat the bull snake. This snake was probably a little too big for a robin or 5 or 6 to attempt to tackle. But it has a nest, right? It's always just use the same nest, comes back, you know, has like, you know, roosts, I don't know, 2 times a year at least type of a deal. But there's at least 2 baby robins in there. So the snake is trying to go full vertical to get the young robins out of the nest, right? And the robin doesn't want that to happen. And so I kind of hate killing like a, you know, helpful, beneficial snake, but at the same time, I actually like birds, and I like robins. And my sister likes them. She likes the cats, being able to look at them. You know, they stay inside, of course. And so got over there. She had 2 shovels. Luckily, I didn't have to bring a shovel. Yeah, I mean, she had 2 shovels. I'll give her that. So, but couldn't find the thing. And turns out it was, she had a fern that was in a pot, and the snake had positioned itself around the fern pots in the other pots. I assume it was in there, probably like moisture wicks out of the pot, and then it had potting soil in the other pot that the fern in the pot was in, if that makes any sense. So we'll use the shovels. We lifted it up out of there, and I tried to get him out. I think he would have just come back, in all honesty, and wound up having to neutralize the threat. I will just leave it at that. So that kind of interrupted the flow, if you will. But I'm kind of glad. I guess I was thinking I would get to reuse this and knock out, you know, the passenger side heater hose too. I've got the driver's side one in there. I don't think I've shown you that. I've got the upper radiator hose in. I don't believe you've seen that either. I would recommend doing that before you put the AC compressor or the alternator. That's probably what I should have done, but again, trying to make like cohesive videos, it seemed to me like, oh, we'll do the cooling system, you know, kind of like as the last thing. And yeah, that was stupid on my part. So go with common sense, not like a you know, beneficial video setup, if you will. So that is clamped though, that is clamped. I've got the fancy covers. I pulled the family before the snake showed up, and they all kind of like the black and blue. I thought the blue and white kind of looked cool. I think I have that in a video just when I was sampling it. But anyway, I've got that set up. I went ahead and put cable ties. I'm kind of thinking you ought to heat shrink the ends of that, but I've also never worked with it, and I do not own heat shrink that would go over a 5/8, you know, heater hose, so that's another story. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. Obviously, unfortunately, I cannot utilize this. I can at least get the constant tension clamps off, so that's a perk. I guess what we're gonna do, we will finally get to the frickin' tensioner and coil bracket, so we'll have that bolted up down there. I think there's a transline bracket. I honestly don't remember how that's situated there. I'll try to figure it out. And then we need to get the crank pulley. So that's what we're gonna do. But hey, that's what happened. It's Sunday. You know, I thought I'd have like, you know, a long day of work, and I was hoping by this time right now, which it's almost 9, I thought like the radiator would be in optimistically if things went smooth. But we'll see. So tomorrow I don't have to go to work at 6:30 a.m. at least not that I know of, because I've got to stay here. I have ordered, I guess I can tell you in the Ram Revival, because I'm thinking I'll have a video and have it set up before you see this part in the Ram Revival. But I've ordered some custom pallet rack. And I do so because, so coming over here, I'm going to give you a quick story. We've got a setup here, and despite this being a nice shelf unit, the Husky, it specs out in the instructions, you got to have that bottom shelf within X distance of the floor. And that's fine, you know, usually you could slide stuff under there, cylinder heads, crankshafts, couple of body panels, bumpers, simple things like that. But, you know, we've got the 318 here, we've got 440 and the 5.2 back here, and they're just taking up space, right? And it's like they block the toolboxes and everything. They block the leg press when I slide them that way. So what the pallet rack is going to do, my shelf will be like right here. And I'm going to be able to slide in motors and transmissions and all kinds of big stuff. And I'm super happy and excited about it. That's all I'm going to say. We're going to get back to work on the Ram Revival. Alright, so we want to pay attention to this. If we have the bracket pointed this way, away from us, we're going to have the idler pulley up here. Now if I spin this around, you can kind of see there's a little mark right there. That's nothing eye edge, that's how this comes. And then there's that pointer. I think that would be a deal where if we swing, I don't know how they think anyone would ever see that, but if we swing this over, if this was mounted and fixed, you know, then you could put tension on this, get the belt slacked so you could pull it off and change it. You'll also note there appears to be a slot in the body, and that would allow the tensioner to mount. Again, this one's probably fine, but since, you know, everything else is new, we're just going to play it safe, throw a new one on. And I do not have, well, in the impact set, we didn't have a 15mm deep. The 15mm shallow was not going to allow the anvil or extension to sit, and I grabbed one of these Ghidorahs, slightly taller, and that's just what I needed, so we're going to run with it. It's kind of the holy grail of sockets that I own at this point in time. But we just want to break that free right there and then put the other one in check. So again, just kind of orient this where you've got the pointer on the bracket and then the mark of your tensioner unit here. So again, kind of just lay it out like so. That way you don't do anything crazy and throw it on the truck and have trouble figuring it out. So orient everything the same, keep it in the whatever configuration. I may have to run to the vise. I don't know how tight this is going to be, but we will get the new one on and the old one off. Yeah, I don't know what that was torqued to, but it was ridiculous. Also, I apparently need to purchase myself some deep 1/2-inch drive sockets of some sort. Everything I have, you know, it looks like it might be slightly the old Craftsman. Like, there's no deep, it's all, you know, shallow. And same thing with all the German stuff that I've got, usually in sets of some sort. Nothing. I thought the door looked a little taller, and I thought I was going to clear. It did not, so wound up having to drop down to 3/8. That's my only way to get a 15mm deep, since that Tecton set didn't have one. And just put it on the end of a breaker bar. So I'm going to spin this thing off and then get the other one in. Definitely either need to mount this back to the truck or come put it on a vise or something so you can actually work with this thing. Alright, so there she is. Ran that nut all the way down. I've got anti-seize not only on the stem where the nut rests, but also on the face here, just in the future proofing things. If I've got it apart, I just as well do it my way. So in theory, if this rusts or corrodes or whatever goes wrong, that'll just make my life hopefully easier in terms of dismantling it. I got to use don't get to use that 3/8 spinner often, and it's such a long stem. I was like, you know what, let's do it. So dug that sucker out, tightened it with the Hazet as strong as I could, and I didn't get much more with the breaker bar. So again, testament to those HP ratchets. But with that said, we have got our brand new tensioner on. Let's go through it on the truck. All right, it's just about 11 p.m. here Sunday night. Before I forget what we've done, living pain in the butt getting that tensioner on there. Dipstick tube is in the way of that back bolt, the one that doesn't hold the coil bracket. Again, 9/16 sockets, 3/8 by 1 inch. All three of them. The two outbank, if you will, there's kind of, it follows the shape of the head. So you've got the 2 bolts here and then the 1 bolt there. These two also hold the coil bracket from the bottom. I think you can kind of see the connector right there. We plugged that in. We also have the coil, wire back to the distributor. Plugged that in, also plugged it into the distributor. I'll probably just cable tie that again. Maybe at some point in time, what R&M sent me will show up and we can mock up a Magnum one. That's basically all we would need to do, is extend it to that front peg on the valve cover. Cable tie should work. In the back, I finally broke free 3/8 socket for the valve cover screws. Busted that one off, got the ground on. It's extremely tight quarters back there with everything going on. In particular, again, the dipstick tube is kind of your nightmare scenario in that case. You're going to need weird sockets and extensions to make it happen. I took right here my little plastic deal that goes over the radiator hose. Man, that radiator hose is strange looking. I can't get past that. But clipped it on. I have all 3 of our lines kind of run into the valve, throttle body I should say. Inside that, it's kind of nested quite nicely. What we need now is the crank pulley, given the time, and I don't know when the freight truck's going to show up tomorrow at the house. It could be 8 a.m. first stop, it could be 11:45, I don't know. So that kind of kills the vibe here. But if also, I lost a good bit of time here after telling you the snake story, because there was a DPS copter in the region. I was getting texts from all my friends that are apparently at home trying to go to bed, and they're saying there's a DPS copter and there's a shooting and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's been a weird day. But we're ready to pull that stuff. The factory crank pulley, crank bolt if you will, what we have here, the factory one on the 5.2, you will need a 1.25 inch socket. I believe that's the biggest socket I own here at the house, so I got fortunate there. The, I believe, 6 smaller screws, or bolts if you will, you will need a 1/2 inch socket. So I've sort of got that set up over here. Let me try to jump over all this carnage from everything going on. And, you can see right there, very difficultly. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's the crank pulley. That's a 1/2 inch socket wedged on there. And again, you will need 1.25 inches for the crank pulley. I'm going crank bolt. Keep saying that, it's late. I'm tempted to try that. It's kind of hard to get to. I sort of still am using this makeshift table with my expensive plywood top. But, I might try to get the thing off. If not, we'll hit that tomorrow. Maybe while I get to stay home and wait on a truck. Alright, so my little Hazet was able to actually just break that free. Had 0 issues. Didn't even need the breaker. And I get to use this, I think, for the first time here. This is my Wiha 1/2 inch nut driver. And at work I would use this all the time, junction box covers and stuff. But here at the house it's typically 1/4 and 5/16. You know, sometimes 3/8. But This will be cool to get to use this here, and it's going to save me a lot of time, particularly just because this is a really unfortunate position to be in. But we'll get the pulley, we'll keep the table intact, and we're going to throw it on before we head in for the night. Alright, so there's the man of the hour. That's what we were looking for at 11 p.m. Could not be happier. It came right off too. I was kind of worried, because if you see there, we got some, it's about one of the only places with a lot of rust on the engine, so it was falling down back there. That sounds like mice. Running around just fine, so I'm gonna clean this sucker up. You can see kind of the bolt hole circle pattern right there. Again, these inside 6, 2 on the bottom, 2 across the halfway point, 2 at the top. We'll go ahead and get this thing bolted up. Not sure the stupid little manual is gonna tell me the torque, but I know it wasn't terribly tight, so we'll just kind of run them in and then see if we can find a torque spec. If not, we'll just go hand tight. Alright, so check that out. Slid under on the creeper, ran the screws in. Did not find a torque spec. I'll try to do that maybe in the morning, and I can torque it down accordingly. But we're so close. It's not quite 11:30. And, I'm gonna throw this down here if I can get there without walking. I bought 2 belts. This one right here is the one we're gonna use. It is K070975. This will be your 5.2, 5.9 Magnum. Right here, we've got K070880. As you can see, I've indicated no AC, and then for my convenience, I put the AC part number below it. So, if you want to drive around with that, you can. Maybe if your compressor blows out, you can throw that on. Who knows? But I'm going to go ahead and try to route this thing. That does not give any dimensions. This does. So again, the AC belt, that part number, and it's going to be 15/16 by 97 3/4. So we're going to go ahead and try to route this sucker on. Boom, went right on. Didn't even look at the routing. I've never actually had that belt off until we took it off, and just kind of went with logic, and it worked beautifully. So the belt fits, the part number can be confirmed. Excited about that. And yeah, this is my stopping point. It is officially 11:31 p.m. so technically I had it done. This little fan went out and I couldn't figure it out, and then it turned out to be when I was on the creeper putting the crank pulley on. I think no, it was actually the tensioner. You know how that creeper rolls, so we got tangled with the stool first, and then I remember we kind of pulled the cord, we'd run over it, and that's all it was. It had pulled it from the outlet back at the wall. So pretty productive day despite having to kill a snake, despite a shootering and all that kind of stuff, kind of distracting. But super late, but again, I luckily have like half a day off tomorrow for the first time in an eternity, because I got to stay home and wait on a truck. So my luck, he'll come at 8 and I'll have to like go to work shortly after. But regardless, we got this done. Again, hopefully it's somewhat helpful to you. Crank pulley went on. I'll have to check that for torque spec. The belt is good. Brand new tensioner. I don't know that I mentioned it, but I did finally put the dipstick in place with that bolt. If you note on the cowl, we're starting to just have tools. The bolts over there, those are AC compressor ones, which we've replaced with stainless. That bolt there, I think, was this one on the alternator, so I replaced it with stainless. Yeah, we're basically to a point where I don't know the exact sequence of this, but clutch fan, radiator, fan shroud, connecting the upper radiator hose to the radiator, installing the lower radiator hose to the water pump and the lower outlet of the radiator. Trans cooler lines have to be reconnected. They also need to be mounted in the brackets, which that one down there is a problem. I've got one off to the side that came off somewhere in this area, and I don't exactly know where it was mounted, so I'm gonna have to see if I can find that in my records. If I wouldn't have had to switch my SD card on my phone, I'd still have those pictures as is. I've just kind of been going back watching the videos. So we've got that to look forward to next time. And the thing that might hold me up is I do not want to run that lower radiator hose without a spring. I could technically pull the spring. Let me find it. It would be this guy. So this is our factory upper. Again, such a nice hose. compared to the one we just bought. Now the issue is when you look inside, not so nice, right? 20 years and a failed cooling system. This one also the same way, but check that spring out. This, in my opinion, this is a factory hose. That's the best hose you're gonna get, and at least, you know, unless you go like super aftermarket. But in terms of standard replacement stuff, factory OE equipment superior. I could pull that spring out. I would spend so much time cleaning the thing. It's better to just buy one or make one, in my opinion. So that's what we're gonna do. And then I need a 5/8, which granted we were gonna do the heater hoses in that part, sort of had to do them this time, you know, for functionality's sake. So I need a 5/8 hose barb connector so we can couple the two together. But yeah, that is the brand new lower radiator hose. It doesn't look as bad as the upper, which is unfortunate because you see the upper. But got to get that structured. Had I not been interrupted today, we would have basically been a lower radiator hose away from firing this thing. Now, not to be forgotten, over here we have overflow, if I'm thinking correct. And over here we had our windshield washer fluid, so we'll have to work with all that too. But use that 15mm on the tensioner. Works really well with the breaker bar. Where did I put that? I don't know. It's somewhere around here. But that's what I would recommend. Get a breaker bar. You can just torque that a lot easier. But yeah, this was a productive day, despite kind of not going like I planned. So I'm super ecstatic about it. We're at a really good progress point, and I'm gonna quit rambling. So I'm gonna get inside, shower. I should be out of the shower here before midnight. That's it, man. So the only thing I'm worried about is that stupid little clamp right there. So we'll see how it goes. I do now, thanks to the Sunday delivery, have a backup bypass hose. I've got the factory one sitting somewhere. The thing I'm trying to not knock over is the anise, by the way. I'm going to clean this place up in the morning too, but here's the factory bypass. It honestly looks the best out of all of the hoses. That side's nasty, but I mean interior, the ID looks pretty dadgum good. So there were those clamps, and man, I love constant tension. So anyway, that's that. I'm gonna quit rambling. Again, hugely happy that Rock Auto delivered, because we made some progress. Let me know what you think of these sort of like hose covers. You know, it sort of blends in. You almost don't see it. Adds a little splash of color. Again, it's kind of weird to deck out like a heater hose, but at the same time it works, and I didn't have anything that would actually fit over the convoluted tubing, so that's another reason. I guess it's all about balance. Let me know your thoughts on that. I'll probably just leave it. If it becomes an issue, I'll cut it. Who knows? But super happy. Gonna get inside, shower. Hope you had yourself a fantastic weekend. Hopefully you didn't have to run to a siblings or, you know, family member's house or friend's place to kill a snake. And hopefully there were no shootings going around in here. There's a mass shooting. They call it a mass shooting, like 6 people at a bar. I don't know. World's crazy. I just want to get my truck running. So with that said, thanks so much for watching. LoneStarMopars.com is the website. You can find us Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all 3 at Lone Star Mopars. With that said, we are getting closer. Cannot wait till the next night I get some time to work on this thing. So stay tuned. Hope you're enjoying. I'll catch you back here for the next thrilling installments of the Ramble Bible.